Hello, and welcome to the public meeting of the DC Lodge. I'm so glad you can join us for Sue Prescott's presentation. But as always, I will start with the invocation and then introduce our lecture from today. So I invite you to read it loud too, but stay muted so that we can uh, hear no echo, and I invite you to read it so that the vibrations are stronger. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they're there for one with every other. And with that, I'm happy to welcome today Sue Prescott from the Seattle Lodge. She has a master's in social work. She's a therapist, a lifelong theosophist, and a frequent lecturer at the Seattle Lodge and surrounding area. She's the author of Realizing the Self Within, an overview of the concepts of spirituality that can be applied to relationships and self-improvement. We're very happy to have her here because we are meeting now via Zoom. We have access to all people who have this knowledge. And so please be free to share your screen now, Sue, and I will go to a different view. And just let us also know if you want us to ask questions at the end, or if it's okay to stop in the middle.
Oh, excuse me, I have to get advanced and then set screen as virtual background. Perfect.
Okay, and I just wanted to say that she has the newest technology, so you can see her. I'm trying to do this so that I can take the other speaker out, but I think that when the recording will work that way. So welcome, Sue. Go ahead.
Okay, welcome. Spiritual teachers and gurus emphasize getting in touch and becoming one with your higher self. From the many guidelines that have been taught, we'll look at the top 7 practical steps to purify and tune our vehicles of consciousness, our minds, our hearts, and our bodies to become one with the divine self. So first of all, I'd like to define the higher self. Okay, so I'm using the levels of consciousness in a human being from the Theosophical teachings. And let's start at the bottom, the physical body, the Sthula Sharira, and the body-mind. And I just want to make a couple comments about the body-mind. Now, I define this. This is the autonomic nervous system that operates our digestion behind the scenes. And if we run, our heart rate picks up. It's the protective mechanisms within us. If we touch a hot stove, we'll immediately pull our hand away. It's habitual body movements that get learned in us, like how to ride a bike or driving. We can be talking or thinking about anything other than driving, but the red light comes on and we come to a perfect stop. So this is in the body mind. But it also includes our defense mechanisms, the fight, flight, and freeze of the amygdala. So this is the amygdala. It's the top of the brain stem, and it's instantaneous reactions, which we need. If we're in an earthquake, we immediately want to run somewhere for protection, but it's also in our defenses and our personalities. And it it's an amygdala hijack when we easily get irritated at someone and get angry or sarcastic or become silent or walk away in a huff. So these are examples of the body mind, which we may not want to have. So anyway, back to the levels of consciousness. Then the next up from the physical body is the linga sharira, the astral double or the etheric double. And this extends off the body, maybe a few inches. You can feel it as heat, or some people can see kind of an outline of the etheric with their vision. Next from that is prana, and that's the vitality and energy within and coming off the body. Prana, chi in China, or ki in Japan, and that's part of Reiki. So next we have kama, and that's the desire body, our emotions. And when it's combined with the mind, it's kama manas, and that's the lower mind that exists that we use in our everyday world so that we can manage our schedules and get to work on time and go after things we need, products, but grocery shop or take care of our lives. And then manas can also, you can see that as the fifth level of consciousness. It can combine with buddhi manas for the higher mind. And then buddhi is the field of intuition. And then atman is the absolute or the field of unity. So let's see. So this is a summary then of the levels of consciousness: the spiritual higher self, the absolute, the field of unity, intuitional body, but the higher mental body, which receives intuition and utilizes reason and wisdom. Then the personal everyday self, lower mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body and body mind. So first of all, I'd like to share some guidelines from spiritual teachings around the world. And as we go through these, be sure and select the ones that you feel are the most important. So I'm going to start with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the 2nd century before current era sage in India. Now he had 5 internal limbs or practices, yamas, 5 external first, and then 5 additional internal limbs. Now the yamas are ways or abstentions to avoid wrong behavior. You probably have heard of ahimsa, harmlessness or non-violence, and then telling the truth, satya, asteya, not stealing, brahmacharya, sexual fidelity, and then not holding on to things or experiences, aparigraha, no jealousy. So graha has the root of grasp. And so we're not going to grasp onto things or life experiences. We're going to have a go with the flow attitude with that. Then so next we have the observances for right behavior. These are internal, or the niyamas, internal practices: shaucha, cleanliness; santosha, contentment; tapas, self-control. Now, as an example of tapas, a woman who's pregnant may use self-control and restrict her diet or what she does so that she's taking good care of her body for the baby developing inside of her. Then on the witness, the self-study, swadhyaya. So swad has then an H, it's a little puff of air in Sanskrit. So yaya, and the is in there. I don't do it perfectly, ya. So there's that way to pronounce it, and bear with me. So, and then self-surrender, Ishvar Pranidhana, and that is in meditation. So then the third way is, for the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, is posture for meditation. Now that refers to the right attitude or frame of mind. You may have heard of asana as the pillow that you might sit on for meditation or even in yoga classes, but it's broader with being the right attitude. Then we move to breath control. Now that's beyond pranayama, which can be the start of meditation. It's also right communication with other living creatures. Then we go into further meditative states. Fifth is withdrawal of attention from sense objects, pratyahara. Concentration or centering the mind on the self, dharana. Deeper meditation is contemplation or dhyana. And then samadhi is the highest meditation, total absorption in the self. Then moving on to Shankara. Now he is also referred to as Shankara Acharya, and that suffix is referring to him as a teacher or a wise one. And he was the 8th century sage in India. And his top one was Viveka. And this is pretty important, hint, hint. So you can keep this in mind as I'm going to pick the 7 top. And this is discrimination between the real and the unreal, the eternal and the temporary day-to-day life. And I just would like to put in Blavatsky's description of God or reality or the absolute as the one life, the omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle, which transcends the power of human conception. It is unthinkable and unspeakable. Now we're going to see how this relates to various other guidelines from around the world. Then moving back to the Hindu virtues from Shankaracharya, the second is Vairagya or Vairaga, and that's detachment and tolerance of what we go through in life. And this is a pretty important one also, hint, hint. So then moving on, the 6 treasures of Shankaracharya is Shama, calmness of mind, and then Dhamma, peaceful action, and tolerance, uparati. Then we have endurance, titiksha, complete concentration, samadhana, and that's in meditation, becoming one-pointed. And then shraddha, faith or confidence that what we're doing is right. Then lastly, love or liberation. Now, Mumukshutvam is actually related to liberation from the bounds of incarnation, of after incarnation, and liberation like into nirvana, but translated into our plane, it means love, this universal love and awareness. Then I'd like to share the 10 commandments of Christianity and Judaism. Now, Christianity has 2 of the first here. Judaism makes 3 out of the first 2, and then it combines the last 2 as we'll get to. So the first is, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And so that is similar to Blavatsky's One Life, and then you'll see some other similarities with this. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor the father and thy mother. And then these get into some basic ones, which are pretty universal too. Thou shalt not kill, or ahimsa, not commit adultery or steal or bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet or be jealous of thy neighbor or covet anything of thy neighbors. So these were combined in Judaism, and Christianity took it from Judaism. So moving on to the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism. Right view is seeing things in the right way. And then I've added from the arrow on a description of what comes from it, which I found is just a beautiful, succinct way of putting this. Leads to understanding and wisdom. So right intention is resolving to do right, and that leads to divine inclination. Right speech, speaking or thinking properly, leads to truth. Right action, appropriate behavior, leads to goodwill. Right livelihood is earning our income in ethical ways. And this is beautiful. It leads to sharing. Right effort leads to the highest outcome. Right mindfulness is being aware of what we're doing and not acting unconsciously, leading to purposeful living. And then right concentration can refer to meditation, leads to the absorption in the unity of all. Then the paramitas of Buddhism, which are beautiful, starts with dana, charity and love immortal. And dana is a cognate of our word donation. So we give donations as we're being altruistic or giving to help others. And so that's dana. Then we have shila. It's moral conduct or harmony in good word and action. Kshanti, and then beautifully described as patience, sweet, which not can ruffle. Then we have Vairagya, detachment and desirelessness. And then Virya, heroism or valor, the dauntless energy that fights for truth. And this is the energy that we use when we're doing what is right. Then dhyana is contemplation and intuitive wisdom, and that's with meditation. And then prajna is direct insight or reality, the wisdom of the self. Then I'd like to share the 5 precepts of Taoism. Now, this can vary with what is taught in Taoism, but these are basic practices that you've seen in these other guidelines. Don't kill or steal or receive unrighteous wealth or engage in sexual misconduct, or don't speak falsely or lie, and don't get intoxicated, but always think of pure conduct. And then there's some concepts in Taoism that I'd like to share, which are beautiful. So the Tao is similar to Blavatsky's One Life, unnameable. It precedes and encompasses the universe as an interconnected whole. It's the way of heaven or living in harmony with nature and all. And then another major part of Chinese or Taoist philosophy is Wei Wu Wei, doing, not doing, going with the flow with detachment and acceptance, similar to Vairagya. And then the wonderful concept of the uncarved block. And that's when we are wanting to come to our true nature of our mind or our pure perception. And it's simplicity and a receptiveness and harmony. And so a carved block is us with our personality quirks and maybe the tendency toward those amygdala hijacks, which we might not want to do. So to be like the carved block. So the first proven way to become your higher self, and I gave you a hint about this comes from Shankaracharya, and it's Viveka. And this is described in the Viveka Chudamani, or the Crest Jewel of Wisdom. And it's a small book, and I highly recommend it. So Viveka means discernment and judgment to discriminate the real from the unreal. In other words, between the Atman and our everyday world, the difference between the eternal spiritual self and the temporary personal self, and between eternal bliss and temporary pleasure. So this difference is exemplified in our realizing ourselves and then the unity of all. We live in our bodies, but we understand with our higher mind the unity of all of life. So we use discrimination in our everyday life as we know right from wrong, and we choose to follow the laws of the land and also rules with behavior that we aren't going to interrupt people or we don't get angry and hit. And so we also use discrimination or discernment with how much money we spend so we don't go into debt, or what we eat. We may not want to gain weight. Now, it's also exemplified in the Noble Eightfold Path as right view. And it also is totally shown in the Golden Rule, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. So Viveka is the awareness of what we do and how we're acting. So I'd like to share a story that came from the Reader's Digest in the 60s. And it was a story about the top US government official that was the foremost expert of counterfeit money. And his word was final, whether money was real or unreal. And the interviewer asked him, how did he learn this? Did he study all sorts of counterfeit money? And he said no, that he spent his time studying real money so that the counterfeit money stood out like a sore thumb. So the lesson here is, if we surround ourselves with the finest ideas in our books that we read, if we surround ourselves with good music, inspiring art, being around selfless people, we will develop ourselves little by little to become our higher self. And this is exemplified in the inscription at the Greek temple of Delphi, know thyself, and this is thy higher self. As well as Shakespeare said it in Hamlet, this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. So moving to the second proven way to become your higher self, I gave you a hint at this one, and I've picked Vairagya. And this is the detachment or desirelessness. And this comes from the root raga, which means uncoloredness. And this is emotionally tinged color. Now, we have many expressions in our day-to-day life that speak about emotions and color. So if we look at the world through rose-colored glasses, we're looking at the world in a positive way. Or if we feel in the pink, we're feeling good. We may be green with envy, or having the blues, kind of a low mood, or if we're really in a low, not good mood, it's a black mood, or seeing red with our anger that may come up. So Vairagya means to see people, things, and events in our world uncolored by our emotions, and to have a sense of acceptance about what happens. For example, if we want something, we may feel down that we can't have it, or an event isn't going to take place, and we're going to be disappointed because our kama manas wants this. But Vairagya teaches us to have a certain indifference about this and a dispassion, and basically then a tolerance that comes for what happens. Now, this is also exemplified in the Shankaracharya's second virtue. It's one of the paramitas of Buddhism. And in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, aparigraha, not grasping after things. And it's the 10 commandments of Christianity and Judaism, thou shalt not covet. So now Vairagya, it's important to realize it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the pleasures of the senses and enjoy good food or music, but just not to have attachment to these. And also not to identify ourselves with traits that can change, like youth or wisdom with age, or even what we earn or the possessions we have. These are always changing. And then we can look past the traits of others to have acceptance of them and tolerance of them. And a wonderful term these days for Vairagya is emotional maturity. And this is the wisdom that we have where we can accept people for how they are, as well as accept quirks in ourselves that we're working on changing. So I'd like to share a story that exemplifies this. And it's once upon a time, there was a Russian farmer whose horse ran away. And his neighbor shared how sorry he was for the man's bad luck. But the farmer says, "How do you know this isn't good fortune?" Well, the next day, the horse came back with another horse, and the neighbor shared how happy he was for the farmer's good luck. But the farmer said, "How do you know this is good fortune?" Well, the farmer gave the horse to his son to train, and he was bucked off. And as the son fell, he broke his leg. And the neighbor once again said how sorry he was for his bad luck. But the wise farmer said, "How do you know this isn't good fortune?" Well, soon after that, all able-bodied men were conscripted into the army, and 90% were killed. So once again, the neighbor said how lucky the farmer was for his good fortune. But again, the farmer said, "How do you know this is good fortune?" So, and this can go on, but it exemplifies having a certain dispassion and tolerance about life. So moving to the third proven way to become your higher self. So what I'd like to do is correspond to the levels of consciousness that were taught from the theosophical teachings. And I'm corresponding one to the physical body and how we behave. So what I've picked is Dhamma, the second of Shankaracharya's 6 treasures. And it means peaceful action. And included in Dhamma is it connotes power and strength. And this is needed to subjugate and restrain ourselves from acting in ways that we don't want to act, such as with anger. It also has a meaning of conquering, and this is conquering our unfettered actions and strong passions, particularly if we're going to hold ourselves from acting with the amygdala hijack of the body mind, just getting hot under the collar, so to speak. And also in Dhamma is the connotation of endurance. And this is withstanding the self-denial that we have to do when we act in proper ways, where we won't hurt another with sarcasm, as well as we're going to act in proper ways for the benefit of ourselves so that we grow and mature. Now, Dhamma corresponds to the yamas or the abstentions for Patanjali. So ahimsa, nonviolence, telling the truth, satya, asteya, not stealing, and then sexual fidelity with brahmacharya. And the niyamas of Patanjali with shaucha, cleanliness, and tapas, self-control, and pranayama, the right communication with others. And it corresponds to the Buddha's Eightfold Path with right speech, action, and livelihood. You can see the common thing here with our behavior. There's many descriptions of how we're supposed to act, and it corresponds to the paramitas shila, or moral conduct. And then, of course, in the 10 Commandments of Judaism, Christianity, and Taoism, not killing, committing adultery, stealing, lying, or coveting. And so this is Dhamma. So moving to the fourth proven way to become your higher self, I'm going to correspond it again to the levels of consciousness and find one that corresponds to the emotions. So what I've decided on is Dana, the first paramita of Buddhism. Now, Dana means charity and love immortal. And as I mentioned, it matches donation. So this is kindness that we would show to others, understanding, tolerance, and also giving assistance or aid to others. So this is a wonderful attribute to keep in mind, Dana. Now it corresponds to the third paramita, Kshanti, which is patience sweet with which not can ruffle. And it corresponds when we're looking at our emotions to keep control of them, to honor thy father and thy mother. And then second commandment, particularly, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. And in the Yoga Sutras, having a contentment with our emotions, and that we really have all we need when you think about it. It corresponds to right effort. And this is, I'm looking at the emotions here. And then to virya, the dauntless energy that fights for truth or heroism. Now, to just explain a little bit about virya, this is the bravery that we need to have if, let's say, we're in a group and people might gossip. And it takes this heroism to say, I don't like to talk about people in this way. Or if we hear a joke that puts down a group of people that we don't necessarily like to participate in, to say this joke doesn't really match with how I view things. So, and when we do that, we're treated with silence because we kind of shock people, but it's what titiksha is, enduring that and being cheerful about things we need to endure. And then the sixth treasure is also included with my choosing Dana, and that's faith or Shraddha, that we're on the right path. And again, this faith is knowing that if we are treating someone with respect, that this is the path of spirituality, as well as the conviction to follow our conscience, because it takes that within us if we're going to hold ourselves back from something. So I'd like to share a story that exemplifies Dana, and it comes from the Native American tradition, and it's the spider and the hawk. Once upon a time, there was a spider who made friends with a hawk. And the spider wanted to see the world from above. So it asked the hawk if it could have a ride on its back. And the hawk agreed, and the spider enjoyed the view from above, but soon he became bored because the hawk spent a lot of time surveying the land. So the spider decided to have some fun at the hawk's expense. Now, there's no cuss words in the Sioux language, but they have a sign language which indicates a put down to somebody. So when the hawk encountered another bird, a magpie or an eagle, the spider made the sign that the hawk was quite a stupid fellow. And he thought the hawk would never know because he was sitting behind his head. But the hawk saw his shadow, And when he did, he got angry and tipped over. So the spider fell off, and he landed in the hollow of an old tree. And he got wedged there, and it began to rain. And because the tree was dry, it started soaking up all the water and expanding. And the swelling caused the spider to be squished, and he was worried he was going to be squished to death. So he cried out, "Why do I do these things? Forgive me, Great Spirit, for making fun of the hawk." So the spider felt very small indeed because of his pride and wickedness. And his humility made him so small, he was able to crawl out of the stump. So the lesson is a little humility, self-knowledge, and prayer can be a good thing sometimes. So this exemplifies Donna, the charity and love immortal. So moving on to the fifth proven way to become your higher self, I'm going to correspond this to Manas, the mind, and what I've picked is Shama, and that's a Sanskrit way to say S-A-M-A. This is the first of Shankara's six treasures, and it means self-control of the mind and calmness. And this is intentionally cultivating tranquility and contentment. Now, Shankaracharya said that the senses were what we're always living around, and the mind was the commander of the senses. The senses are prompting us all the time to do this or that. And it's kama manas. And we are to focus our attention on the higher self and not just be going after things that we want. So Shama corresponds with uparati, or tolerance. Now, uparati is stopping worldly action. That's the root in it, which means to rest. And this is cessation from eagerness of going after things or even meeting certain people. So uparati is to train ourselves to have a sense of completeness within. It also corresponds to the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path with right intention. Then moving on, it corresponds to the fourth observance of Patanjali, Swadhyaya, and that has an H as with Sanskrit, it has a little puff of air. So it's Swadhyaya, and that self-study or the witness. Now I'd like to do an exercise that helps you get in touch with what the witness is. So just for a moment, look away from your computer screen to something in the room, and don't focus on anything in particular, but just hold your head still and simply notice how you're sitting. Without moving your eyes, notice how you're seated in the chair, where your hands are, where your legs are, and then widen your awareness to pick up where you are in the room. And notice the entire room with your peripheral vision, but just let your awareness expand into this. Then let yourself be aware of where you are in the room and in the building you're in, either your house or your apartment. And then expand yourself to your neighborhood and grow your awareness to your city. And let this expand to go to your state, and then to the entire United States, and expand yourself to consider as being part of North America and then of the world. And then expand even further to being part of the solar system. And then go as far as your awareness can go and your imagination to being part of the cosmos. So coming back to the room and the computer as we meet together, this is part of the witness, and it is using Buddhi Manas to get to this expanded awareness. And this is what we do with meditation. So Shama is having control of the mind so that we can develop this greater awareness. So what I'd like to do is share a story that exemplifies having control of the mind. And it's about two monks going on a journey. And this picture shows two same-aged monks, but we have a senior monk on a journey with a junior monk. And as they're walking together, at one point they come across a river with a strong current. And as they're preparing to cross it, a young, beautiful woman comes up to them and asks for help in crossing. Now, the two monks glance at one another because they took a vow not to touch a woman. Then, without a word, the older monk picks up the young woman and carries her on his back across the river and gently places her down on the other side. Now, the younger monk, as he's keeping up with the senior monk, he can't believe what just happened. He is speechless, and he can't get it out of his mind that this monk picked up the woman and carried her. 2 hours pass, and he's still thinking about it. Finally, after 3 hours, he could not contain himself, and he says to the monk, "As monks, we are not permitted to touch a woman. How could you carry her on your back?" And the kindly senior monk responded compassionately with, "Brother, I set her down by the side of the river many hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" So the lesson is with Shama and being aware with what's in our mind, we can choose what we think. So moving on, the sixth proven way to become your higher self, and I'm using the chart, something to match Buddhi, the field of intuition. I've picked Samadhana, the fifth of Shankara's 6 treasures. And this is concentration on pure being, becoming one-pointed. And this is in meditation. So in meditation, we start with pratyahara and this withdrawal of attention from sense objects. And we move to Ishvara Pranidhana, or self-surrender, as we surrender our awareness of the room in our bodies into something deeper. And then we move to Samadhana, complete concentration of the divine. And this becoming one-pointed is in our minds. And as we meditate and practice this, we can have deeper meditations, but it also influences our normal energy level. We will become calmer and have more of an ability to be tolerant of others. Now, this corresponds with asana, the right attitude for meditation, right mindfulness and concentration from Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, corresponds with dharana, with meditation, centering the mind on the self, and dhyana, deeper meditation. And I'd like to share something from Clara Codd. She was an early theosophical writer, and she wrote The Way of the Disciple, which she expounds on Shankaracharya's six, the hidden virtues, sacred virtues. And she said, take a short time in the morning, if possible, as it sets a rhythm for the whole day when you can be still and alone. Let your mind seek and ponder to learn to respond to invisible potencies around and within you. When your mind is truly quiet, it allows you to perceive the impressions from your higher self. So this is a good practice to do as we are wanting to become one with our higher self. So the seventh proven way to become your higher self, and corresponding with the theosophical teaching, I'm picking one that goes with Atman. And I've chosen Mumukshutva, the fourth of Shankara's virtues. And as I mentioned, this is liberation and union with the divine, but it is translated on the physical plane as love. This is the desire for the highest within us, the highest spiritual self. But as we are loving with others, it corresponds to the right concentration, and that's with meditation, leading to the unity of all. And then samadhi, or the total absorption in the self. And this love is with our interactions with others, but also with our love from our inner spiritual self. And in meditation, it corresponds with the last paramita, prajna, direct insight into truth or reality. And from the voice of the silence, where Blavatsky just transcribed from the Book of the Golden Precepts, she described how prajna was the steady golden fire that is unreachable and radiates from Atman. It is within us, but we can't touch the flame. The flame is Atman. It's a metaphor for that. So surrounding the flame of prajna is an alabaster vase that is white and transparent. This is the higher self. Dhyana is reached through meditation and is the golden key that unlocks the gate of wisdom, or prajna. So prajna is the inner flame within us, with the translucent vase is our higher self. So we are the alabaster vase, and as we work on becoming more pure, the vase will shine ever more brightly with the flame of prajna. And in closing, I'd like to share some quotes from Krishnamurti, pictures of him as a younger man and as he's teaching. This describes meditation. Standing at the beach with the waves and the wind coming in, you feel there is nothing between you and the sky. You are lost in the beauty. You see not only with your eyes, but with your heart. This openness is meditation. There's no barriers at all. When you are one with nature, a great stillness comes. This is beyond the brain. You are so still, you become completely part of the earth, part of everything. Even the breeze does not disturb the stillness. Meditation is the explosion of love. This love knows no separation. To it, far is near. It is a state of love when and which all division ceases. The beauty of love is not in you or outside you, but everywhere. So this concludes my talk, and you may have some comments or questions, but thank you.
Well, Sue, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I love the summary of your of so many traditions, but I also love the little stories you integrated. So I am opening this up for questions and comments. And the way you can do that, please, is unmute yourself or raise your hand. I see some clapping hands from Adrian here. And so I'm just waiting to see who will, if there are any questions. So Ed, go ahead.
Wonderful talk, Sue. You covered all the bases, but it seems like overwhelming. All the things that we could be doing or should be doing, and any comment?
Well, I think just doing what you can, there's some wise comments that are said from various teachers, like where you are is where you're supposed to be, or whatever, just work with what we have now and use these various levels. And I have found it so useful to learn these and just kind of this jnana yoga or jnana yoga, and it helps me. Over.
Okay, thank you. Robert, go ahead. Good question.
Sue, thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation. A lot of work putting it all together and summarizing all the different aspects into one. So, thank you.
Well, you're sure welcome.
Yes. Oh, Gwen, go ahead.
Hi, Sue. I'm wondered, I think it was great. I loved it. How does the breath work with all of this in the different levels?
The breath?
The breath.
Well, several ways. Well, first of all, with meditation, it is useful to do pranayama. And I was taught that you hold one nostril with one side, with your thumb, you breathe in, and then you switch to the other side and you kind of cup your hand. That tends to kind of make us harmonious within our bodies, with the outgoing part of us and the internal part. It tends to harmonize, and that's the Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. And so that's worth it. But it's also when we are activated with our amygdala, we usually go, like if we're surprised or shocked, or we pull our hand away, our breath starts, and then we tend to get tight in our shoulders and our solar plexus. And if we have to run for shelter with an earthquake, run for a table or whatever to go under, we need our muscles tight so we can get out of a chair and get going. We need to have glucose put to our large muscles to run, let's say, if we're running from a wild animal eons ago. So this breath is quick paced, and it tends to, it gets us where we need to go if we're really running from a threat, but it makes us uptight. And we don't need that in our everyday world. So breath, and particularly an exhale, calms the body. And I teach clients that I see in therapy not to worry about the inhalation like this, and a long exhale. Bag your awareness of the inhalation, because that's activating. It tends to make us a little ready, ready to go. Any kind of inhalation is fine. You don't have to count 4 or 8 on that. Just concentrate on a long exhalation. That's
helpful. I wanted to interrupt you there, because I also am a therapist, and I've taught my clients that when they shorten their breath, they're basically undergoing that hijacking
Yes.
experience. And so many times they will come into a session and you can see them becoming anxious as you're speaking with. And so the exhale is very important. The inhale, I've noticed they will hyperventilate rather than, you see, so that breath to me is so important in all of this, in my own work, because I have to be calm with my breath.
Yes,
Well,
totally.
you see, so that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Sue.
Sure. Well, so just an additional thing about the exhale. Sometimes people like to make a little circle with their mouth as they blow out. And I find it, for me, it triggers more because I'm using my body and it triggers, okay, relax, calm down. You don't have to get all fluffled up, ruffled up here in a kerfluffle. And so you can use it with just an exhale out of your nose or whatever, but I like the little signal to myself. And then I just take a breath any way I want. And that's, have found the best way. Over.
Thank you, Jeannie. That was wonderful. I just want to add, because I'm a yoga instructor, that it does, with the people would just understand this connection between your mental state and your breath, things would be much easier. Anyhow, Jeannie, go ahead.
I just want to say a few things. One, I'll definitely be listening to this again. Thank goodness we get recordings. Two, I wish I had a Word document with the transcript, because I'd like to take some of these words and research them and look them up. And three, this video should be in the TS video series, and it also should just be on YouTube for people. I mean, that was awesome. Thank you.
Well, you're sure welcome. Yes, I'm going to get this going. I'm making more copies of my book, going to give them to TS branches and for the Book Gift Institute and or to libraries. And we'll definitely have this as well as other talks for people, just really to translate this into everyday life. And so I'm very glad to share the copy of my wording, and I can give it to Susanna, and it'll have the quotes in it or just these various teachings, because they're excellent. And there's such a similarity in them as well. It's really cool. Over.
I wanted to say that in these presentations, if you hit your I don't know what kind of keyboard you have, but if you hit not control, but the window and the print screen, you can get a screenshot of, because every time you put on one of your things, I put a screenshot so I could remember them. So it's, I think as long as you have Windows, you can do that. And I know you can do it on an Apple product too, but I don't know how to tell you to do that.
Oh, that's cool. Yes, easier than taking a picture with your phone, which I've done with some, but I'll be happy to make this available. It's just wonderful knowledge. I agree with you.
I missed that second part. You hit window button and then what?
You hit window at
Yeah.
the same time as you hit print screen.
Print screen, okay.
And it saves to your desktop under a folder that's screenshots.
Very good advice. I'm doing this often with presentations to take screenshots. I have an Apple, and what you do is Shift, Command, and then push 4, and a little cross comes up, and then you have to draw it basically to see how much of the screen you want to copy, and that works.
And Shift Command 3 does the whole screen.
Oh, well, Mom, Ed, I'm learning again. Great. But sending me as a copy either of the PowerPoint or with, as a Word document would be great. And I just wanted to read one chat comment by Eleni. Thank you for a very helpful and clear review of the perennial wisdom and how every moment we have the opportunity to practice to connect to our higher self and in turn be of true service. And Adrian said, agreed. Yes, absolutely. Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment? I think one of the things that I loved when you pointed out at the beginning that you follow, you pick the tradition that you really, that speaks to you. And I love the Yoga Sutras of by Patanjali, and I have several copies. But I also like the Voice of Silence, and I'm getting more into that. So that was a very good advice. And a technical advice from Susan, she says, Apple also has Grab that captures a screen or a selected part of the screen. Looks like scissors. Very interesting. Okay, and with that, I will end this session. I hope you can join us next week when Ed Abdul is giving a presentation. He's from the New York Lodge, and he's a national speaker. And with that, I'm going to just end this session and stop the